Hello, everyone. Welcome to BACKtalk, the premier podcast from successful Black Parenting Magazine, featuring in-depth conversations and expert insights on crucial topics for Black families. We are ranked one of the top 4 Black family podcasts on FeedSpot, and we're now number 1 on Million Podcasts, too. I'm your host, Janice Robinson Celeste. Now, I got to tell you that we have a really interesting show today. And this show is totally affecting me because I just lost a loved one. But when we are grieving for a loved one who has just passed, what do we teach our children about grief? If you don't understand what I'm talking about, I want you to take a look at this video.
Hi, Dima. I love you. I wish you can come back from heaven. You're the best babysitter in the world.
All right. It's going to be a heavy show, but don't go anywhere. We're about to unpack this very topic. Stay tuned.
This is BACKtalk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the most listened to podcast for parents by parents.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into BACKtalk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine. We are your go-to parenting podcast. So I want you guys to tune in, share it live. We're live right now. You can ask questions on our Facebook page. Just go into the comment section, do it early. So that way I can probably put your question on air. I'll check it out and see if we want to do that. But, put it on air and we'll talk about your question. Or even if you just have a comment or some accolades, just put it there. I may actually show your comment live on air. So thank you. But today I have in the studio Chanae Wood, Esquire. So I want to welcome you, Chanae, to our podcast, to BACKtalk. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It really is a pleasure to be here with you.
Now, you're an author. We're going to get into everything, but let's start with an introduction. Tell our audience who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So I am Chanae Wood, or Chanae Lavette, as most people know me on Instagram. I'm a mother, a wife, faith-filled, rooted individual. But for a living, I'm an attorney. I practice municipal and land use and zoning law. And most recently, I am now an author where I've published my first children's book, Where is Skip Pa, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. It was born from my own pain in losing my father. And I know we'll jump into that a little later, but it's just something that I just truly believe is divine and God orchestrated to help heal our Black families. And so I'm excited to be able to offer just my story and what I've gone through to be able to encourage others as they navigate grief and healing.
Right. And for the people who are watching, you're just tuning in, I want you to, if you've lost someone close to you, I want you to put in the comments how you dealt with that. Because I lost my father, now he was everything to me. So I can relate. And he was pretty young and I was young. I was in my 20s, but that pain never goes away. It just, you learn to deal with it. But it was devastating. And I had a young child, but she was too young to understand. She was 2 at the time. So I think this is very important because children manage grief differently. And like I said, we'll get into all of that later. But you've been very open about the impact of losing your own father. Can you walk us through that moment in your life and how it changed you?
Absolutely. My father, similar to what you just described in terms of being such an instrumental part of your life, that was my daddy. I'm one of 10 kids. And so there's a lot of us, both my father and my mother, they did just a really, really great job in terms of parenting. They did the best they could do with what, tools and resources they had at that time. But my father in particular has always been this staple in our family, big personality, super wise, and always the person that I would go to for comfort or advice. And just everyone loved him. It's just kind of like that big personality. So it's like when you lose someone like that, it is a very significant loss. And it's something that leaves what may feel like a hole or a gap. And so my father actually had sarcoidosis, which is a lung condition. Throughout many years, he was providing for us as a family. And so he was a dental technician. And during that time, he was inhaling aluminum without realizing it. And so there was a lot of scarring and scarring on his lungs that ended up coming to being ultimately what led to his passing. But we're just always been a very faith-filled family. So I think even through the process of losing him, which at the time, I think my faith was so high, and it still is. I just had this ultimately high faith that we weren't going to lose him. So that process for me, I don't think I faced reality until the very end, until it was when I actually did realize that he had passed, is when reality hit me of like, wait, well, what is life now without somebody that was such a staple? So even the idea of grieving for me or grief for me, I think there was this delay in it. Because I wasn't able to come with just the terms of that. This actually happened to us. We lost our father. We've lost other people throughout. Having a lot of people in your family, you probably are prone and likely to have experienced more grief, and that's what we've dealt with. But I would say that I still didn't think it was going to happen to us. We weren't going to lose our daddy, right? And so navigating grief first for myself felt like coming to terms with it up front. And so
Right.
whereas Skip part was born from just that, me trying to figure it out myself, and then how do I have the words now to communicate it to such a little human who don't understand grief themselves.
Right. Now, where did the name Skip come from?
So my daddy called me Buddy growing up. That was his pet name for me. So he said, my buddy. And so when I had my son, it was this automatic connection, I would say, between my father and my son. And so he was sitting there one day and he was like, I'm trying to figure out what to call Aubrey when, now that he's here. And he said, you know what? There's a show called Gilligan's Island. There's a character on it named Skipper.
Oh.
And there's the other character called Buddy, and they're like a little pair. And so he says, I'm going to be his Skip Pa. He's going to be my little buddy. And so the rest is history from there. Yeah.
That is adorable. This is the
Yeah.
cover of the book, guys. If you're watching live, you can see the cover of the book. If you're watching this on Spotify, on video, or whatever platform you're going to see this later, you can see the cover. It is available on Amazon.com, and I'll put the link in the description once we post this so that you can get the book if you're having a difficult time explaining grief to your child. I have family members right now that are dealing with this. We lost someone very close and impactful to the whole family just 2 days ago, and he has grandchildren. And so this book would be very appropriate even for my family members. I will put the link in the description, and you guys can purchase her book. Okay. Now,
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead. Please go.
No, I was just saying it's available July 29th. So
29th. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Can you pre-order it now, though, right?
Yes, you can pre-order the online version. So like the ebook, you can have that pre-ordered now. But the actual hard paperback will be released July 29th on Amazon as well as on Barnes & Noble. So you'll have both of those outlets to be able to purchase it.
Okay. And if you guys missed the introduction, we played a video with an adorable little, maybe preschool girl who was leaving a video message for her grandmother because she couldn't understand that she had passed. And she did not understand why her parents couldn't send that video to her grandmother. And it's just so adorable. So when we finish, please go back and at least look at the replay and check out that video because it will tug at your heart. But I'm going to tell you, get some tissue. It's fast, but it's very impactful, and it explains what we're talking about here today because grief looks different for adults than it does for children. What signs did you notice in your own son that made you realize he was grieving too?
So for me, it was the questions of, where is Skip Pa? And that's why the book is named what it is, right? From my son's lens, like we dealt with my father being in the hospital and going back and forth and recognizing that there was this decline in his health. From his little lens, it's Skip Pa's here one day, and then the next day we're going to go see grandma. Ma, but where's Skippa? So his grief showed up more so in questions of just like trying to understand where's this person that like just literally if on one day he's here and the next day he's not, where did he go? And then that is when I recognize I need to find the way to gently and tenderly communicate to him where is his Skippa. And so what I did in the book was just kind of route through some of the favorite places that my dad would be. And so you find Aubrey in the book with this, confusion on his face, because indeed that's what it looks like. I think in a lot of children is more, it's first, it's just I'm confused because I don't understand what death is, what loss is. And I'm confused as to where, or these are the places that I'm used to seeing them. Why aren't they here? And so for me, it was just recognizing that with him. And then now finding the words to say, well, Skipper has a new home now. And so where you would normally see him in his man cave, he has a new cool man cave. And, he has a new home that's with streets of gold. And so describing and tying back into our faith, because we're very much so a strong rooted Christian family. And so giving him that hope of that, even though they're not here on this side of the earth, there's somewhere else that our loved ones go, and we can strive to get there with them, or we can make up in our minds what life must be like for them up there, because we don't know. We don't. But at the end of the day, we can give them some things to hope for, or to feel this belonging that they're still a part of them, because they are. So for sure, for me, it was just recognizing that he had questions and I had to find the words to be able to give him the answers to those questions.
Oh, okay. Now, in the Black community, we are just starting, and not a lot, to come around to getting therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to therapy for your father's death?
Absolutely. Yes. And in fact, I was already in therapy, I would say, before. And so I think it was good timing. And I'll be the first one to admit, I I was not a fan or a champion of therapy. I've tried multiple therapists and I didn't really find it to be useful. And I realized it's like dating, right? You got to keep on trying until you find your person. And I found my person in a therapist. So, luckily, I was already in therapy during that time. And I just continued as I worked through my grief. And I struggled with the idea more so that my son might not remember my father because he was so young. Similar to what you just described with your child, is that at 2 years old, so there's that feeling of, will you even remember these connections that you've made with this person? And her advice at that time was, you should write him a book. And so, coupled with him asking certain questions as we're going down to my mother's house, plus my therapist saying to me, like, you should write him a book, is how I began to therapeutically write out my feelings and write out the story to make sure that my father could not be forgotten. And so I think even from the standpoint of how I went to therapy for one reason, not realizing that something so beautiful would even come out of it, because those tools that my therapist was able to provide me is now the reason why we have this cover of the book and this book that's being published now, is that it was something that was birthed from my pain and my loss, and figuring out, how do I get somebody to help me navigate that? Because growing up Black, for sure, like, it's not something that is easily talked about. Therapy feels like it's something for another race, something that we don't have access to because of financial barriers. So as much as possible, I am a proponent of Jesus plus therapy. Like, I've always been that person. Like, I think that they go together, and we should utilize these resources that God has given us to be able to heal properly.
I agree. I agree 100%. How did therapy shape how you parented your son through this loss?
It allowed me, I would say, to heal and to work through my grieving process. Because what I've found, when people hurt people, right? And so me not being able to deal with my emotions properly, say I'm having a bad day or emotional day, but my son is still my son. He's still a 4-year-old that wants to jump up on down on me and put me in a headlock some days and all these other things that little kids do. So how do I be able to deal with my human emotions and then still be there for him and his pure joy? So I think therapy gave me an outlet to be able to properly heal and still grieve and still recognize what are these emotions, because I would say my grieving process felt like a wave, where there were times where I felt like, all right, I can do this, and God, you prepared me for this in ways that I didn't realize you prepared me. And then there's other days that I felt like, how am I going to make it through life without a person that I looked at as such a huge confidant for me? And so that therapy helped me to be able to show up as the mom that my son deserves to have. And then beyond that, just the tools and resources I think that are provided out of therapy gives me now the words to navigate and to talk to and to ask the questions. And I think that's the beauty, is that sometimes when you're in therapy, you think it's just about you, but you also are picking up these tools and resources that you then can now start to plant seeds in the lives of those around us.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Black families, though, they often avoid talking openly about death with children. Why do
Right.
you think that is?
I think there's this stigma around it, right? Even when it comes down to wills and trusts. Um, in my career, and while I don't practice trust in estates, I see it often where so many of us pass away and our loved ones pass away without any wills, without anything set up in place, because we have this fear of death, or this idea that I want to talk about that. Even I've seen it in my own family where it's put off for so long, and then until the time comes. I think, you know, I think there's some fear and anxiety around it, which is rightfully so. But I think if you have the assurance and knowing that if I were to die today, and something that I honestly believe, like if I were to pass today, folks around me would know that I made it in and that I'm okay and that I'm at peace. And I think having that sense of hope allows you to be able to talk about these difficult conversations easier. Otherwise, we kind of stay in this same predicament where it's taboo and we don't want to acknowledge it, because whatever we speak out loud tends to come to pass. And while that may be true, I still think that at some point we just got to be reality. We are human. This body that we live in is not going to be here forever. So we need to have these uncomfortable conversations, so then your loved ones on the back end don't have to deal with not only the sadness and hurt of losing us, but also now I have to deal with your like estate and your finances. Like I don't want to
Too much.
leave that behind, right?
Yeah, too much.
That's too much. I don't want to do that to folks. And I think that if we start thinking about it that way, maybe we would have more conversations around it and we would plan, because I don't want to leave this burden on these people that are already mourning me as a person. Now you have to also navigate my life. Like, no, that's too much.
Yeah, I'm having those conversations with my 83-year-old mom now, and I'm like, "Do you realize I won't be? I'll be pretty much catatonic, and the fact that I have to figure out how I'm going to clean out your house of with all these years of knickknacks and things, and then I'm planning a funeral, and on top of that, I'm trying to figure out your finances, and
Hello.
I can only do one thing at a time, ma'am. That's it. I don't want to do all of that. I don't want to do any of that. And yet
Yeah.
alone, don't. So she has a book. I said, please fill this book out. You know, the book tells you where everything is, because I don't know where anything is. So yeah, we don't want to be dealing with any of that when we're dealing with the loss of a loved one. But when kids are going through things and they see you going through it, and parents sometimes think the kids don't feel anything. Like
Mm.
that's what gets me. Like, oh, they're young, they're not gonna remember this, or they're not gonna know, they don't feel this. Yeah, they do, right? They do, and you've seen it with your own son.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And I have, like I mentioned before, I'm one of 10. So
Mhm.
there is a lot of kids in our family. We've had 26 and counting grandchildren in our family. So when I say I understand that, and they all different variations in age, they've seen a lot. They've dealt with a lot in our family. They've seen, grandpa pass or their cousins pass. Like I've had nieces as young as 2 years old who have passed. So children see grief. They see how us adults handle that grief. And if we aren't responsible enough with our emotions and our feelings, we then pass on these negative things to them, and they pass it on to their children, and they keep on going. So I think that it's so important to recognize that, no, they're not too young. They understand what's going on. They can sense the feeling. They know how mama acted before versus how she acts now. Like, I think that we need to be mindful and, responsible with how we operate with our grief, because some people also, I think, use grief to stay down. Like, and don't get me wrong, I think it's important to recognize your feelings and your emotions, but it's important, if you can, master up the strength to pull yourself out to do just that, if not for you, but for the other people that are relying on you. Because I've seen so many times where folks have, passed away, and now the graves that they live in, their loved ones live in too, and they're on this side of the land of the living, And I think that is something that we have to be mindful of. Like, our loved ones, like my daddy don't want us crying and pulling ourselves off the ground every day. Like, I think he's so proud of me and my family and our efforts to continue his legacy through this way and honor him this way. And I think that's what our loved ones want more than anything, is knowing that you are honoring me, even if it's not writing a book. You're honoring me by showing up to work today. You're honoring me by getting out the bed, by just pushing through. I know it's hard. I know you're hurting, but you are honoring my legacy by showing up, because when you talk to somebody else, everything that your loved one poured into you somehow slips out in conversation. I can't tell you how many times I'm always like, my daddy said, or my daddy used to do this. It comes up and it comes out. And that's what this book is about. It's about legacy, loss, and love.
Right. That's right. And grief is a difficult thing. It really is. And it's so individualized. We have a question from Janelle Henry. Thank you for posting. She said, how do you handle when your son talks about or asks about your dad?
When he first started asking, where's Skip Pa, or if I say we're going to grandma's and he'll say, or even better example, when we pray at night and he starts to pray for his family and he prays for Skip Pa too, it caused me to be, I would say, really emotional. Just him saying Skip Pa out loud for some reason would trigger such a deep feeling in me. But I realized, like, it's more happiness than it is sorrow, because I know that his legacy lives on. And just the short amount of time that my father was able to have his moments with Aubrey were so impactful. And I think it makes me emotional even talking about it. It's just the idea of knowing that, man, in such a short amount of time on this earth with Aubrey, yet he still brings you up. And that's the type of impact I hope to have in the future with my grandchildren, of my loved ones, is that you're so big of a person. You're so beautiful and such a person that you're so unforgettable, rather, that even this little 3-year-old still calls out about you. So it makes me happy more than anything when he asks certain things.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Janelle. I appreciate your question. Guys, you can always ask questions on our Facebook page right under the comments for this live broadcast as well. Or we're on YouTube Live in the comment section there, and they will appear just like you see here. As far as talking about death with our children and avoiding talking about death with our children, what do you think we can do better as parents and other family members too, instead of avoiding the conversation?
I think that we can start to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because they're not comfortable conversations. And so we tend as human beings to avoid things that we don't like, that don't feel good. And so we can just put ourselves out there, just start it, just say, even if your loved one is still around, having these conversations pre-death is much better, right? Like I gave my example where I don't really think reality hit me with my father's situation until it was what it was. I have, some of my siblings, my sister in particular, I think she wrapped her mind around it much sooner than I. And maybe she navigated that initial grief a little better than I did because she came to terms with what the reality was, right? So I think that having the conversation early on, using examples and situations that are relatable and understandable to our children, because I think we try to shelter them from this world as long as we can. And I get why, right? This is a tough world to be in. And nowadays, there's so much coming at our children. So we want to protect them for as long as we can. But I don't think protecting them means not being honest with them. And I'm not telling you to give them the most vulgar, descriptive way of how a person may transition. But I do think that we need to give them start planting little seeds early enough to know that everything has an end to it, right? And that end may be here, but it continues in a spiritual realm. But at the end of the day, there's an end to this natural world. It just is. And I think the earlier we're able to give them an understanding of what that looks like, then we'll all be in a better place, because now they'll be able to navigate grief a little differently. And maybe we won't be acting out in other ways, because even say a teenager, how do they handle this and navigate losing? I have nieces and nephews who are in high school or middle school, and their grief may show up as anger. So how do I help them in their grieving process? And I think you help them by introducing them to grief and knowing how to handle their emotions at an earlier age. And we can't do that if we aren't really being honest with what it is.
That's great advice. Let's talk about healing. I know when my father passed, what helped me was my love for science. Number one, it sounds weird, but he died suddenly from a brain aneurysm on New Year's Eve night when he was sleeping and never woke up. So, and he had a big personality, right? Like most of our dads, right? Big personalities. And so he was laying there on this machine, keeping him alive, which I knew he didn't want. But right then I still had my dad, so I remember that very, very, very vividly. And he was a mechanic, so his nails would be oily and dirty a lot. And so he hated that because he felt like he'd being judged. So I was like, you're in a hospital, I'm going to trim your nails. And I grabbed his hand, and it was hot. Like he had a burning up fever because he was brain dead and I didn't know. And then I went to grab the clippers to clip his nails and grabbed his hand again, and it's frozen like it was in a freezer in a matter of seconds. And his brain couldn't regulate his body temperature. And so I was like, I remember dropping his hand and being devastated. And I was like, what's going on? And it came to me, okay, he's brain dead right then. They didn't even have to tell me. And so I remember thinking to myself, in science, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only transform and go someplace else. And he had such a big personality. I realized his soul is not here. His soul is not here. And where did it go? Where did it go? Your soul is energy. And I connected those at that moment for me to help me. And that helped me heal, to know that energy that made him, that lived inside his body, because we're made of energy, salt, reactions, saltwater reactions and chemistry in our body, but we're made of energy. And so that energy has to live somewhere, whether it's heaven, whatever it is you believe in, it's somewhere. And that gave me hope to know that he's still around. And that's how I heal. Was the writing process for this book healing for you?
Yes. That's a very easy question to answer, and I'll elaborate a bit. But yes, it was therapeutic, and it gave me purpose. It made me believe that I am doing what my father would have wanted me to do, which is continue to share about our traditions, our stories. Even there's a portion in the book where I reference how he'll be standing at the gates with mangoes in hand to provide them to my son. That's a tradition that they had together and that he had with all his kids. And, my daddy was known for that. So those little moments of me being able to bring in just love and those traditional things, that gave me this sense of peace that, like you, it had to go somewhere, right? That soul, that spirit had to transition something. And as I've mentioned before, I am very much so faith filled, and I live this Rom 828 lifestyle of all things work for my good. And I really trust and I believe that. I love the Lord and I'm called according to his purpose. It works for me. It works for my good. Even the things that look like they are bad or they look as though they should defeat me, I've always accepted that this was intentional, and whatever lesson I'm supposed to pull out of this, God's got something for me. So I think that also helped me in my healing process of knowing that this feels terrible. I lost this person that I love so deeply, but something good got to come out of it. Like I know it does. And that's what Raya Skipper comes to play, is that this is the good. Like this is the fruit of that goodness that existed even in loss.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the ROM 8 next, but we have another question. How are you taking care of yourself while grieving outside of therapy? That's a very good question. Thank you for that.
It is. I would say I wake up and I go to the gym, and that is my time to disconnect from the world. And so I used to be about 95 pounds heavier. So a lot of folks know me from just being transparent with my weight loss journey. And while that's the outward side of what people may see, right? That physical transformation, for me, it's more so the mental transformation that took place of losing. I'm like 95 pounds lighter mentally more than anything. And so now I use the gym as what I see as my outlet. And I know it's maintenance and but for me, it's more than just that. It's my alone time. It's my time where I can get, poured into. I listen to a lot of podcasts during that time. I listen to my scripture, my word. It's an intimate moment for me and God and myself. So I think that that's a way that I'm actively, taking care of myself. And then those other things that I have in my life, as you mentioned, Ron Mate and my outreach and what I do to pour into others is a form of therapy for myself. And so some people might might not look at it that way, but it's important that when we do grieve, like you said, your healing, part of your healing journey was science, that is unique to you and unique to your relationship with your father. My dad was a minister, a people's person. He's a poor. And I think that in part two of healing and from, and taking care of myself is doing the things that I know I love to do and that naturally comes to me. So, yeah.
Great. That's fantastic. So you spoke about ROM 8. Tell everybody what that is.
So ROM 8 is a lifestyle brand that's rooted in ROM's 828, which is all things work for the good of those who love the Lord and are called by his purpose. And so ROM 8 is something that God placed in my heart to establish for primarily his women, I would say. And so we curate events that inspire, empower, and also educate those around us in the space of holistic wellness, so mind, body, and soul. We have our annual event, Envision Me Conference, which is if there's anything to go to in terms of Raw Made events, I say go to them all. But Envision Me Conference in January is a 3-day transformative experience where we really just pour into the whole woman. And so our goal is always making the whole woman whole. And so we bring in resources that does just that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, how does that mission tie into your book?
So it's the core of, I would say, the mental health component, that mind component. Grief can cause us to be stuck. Grief can cause us to be paralyzed in life. And so the mission of Raw Mate is to ensure that you're envisioning yourself how God called you to be. And you can't be that if grief have you in a grave as well. And so this book is a tool and a resource for women, for anyone, truly, anyone that can navigate this topic, need help navigating this topic with the little one. It's for you to find those words and to have those words to communicate. And it also allows you yourself to feel purposeful. Like, I'm not just allowing life to happen to me, right? Nothing's happened to me. Everything happens for me. And so the book is another tool and a resource that we bring to share with folks that, hey, you don't have to go at this alone. I got you. Like, I got you covered, and I've been through this, and I can share with you what got me out of my own situation to inspire you to do the same.
That's fantastic. I'm glad that you are doing this and that you did the book. And just remind everybody, what's the date that the book will come out on Amazon again?
Yeah, so the date is July 29th. You can get it on Amazon and also on Barnes & Nobles. And if you want to be on our mailing list, you can just head over to ChanaeLavette.com, and you'll get that link sent directly to you on July 29th.
Okay. What do you hope Black families, especially Black moms, will take away from your story and your work?
I hope they will take away hope, that they too can get out of whatever situation that they're in, whether it's grief, whether it's something else that they feel as though is holding them back or that should take them out. I hope that they look at me and my situation and my experience and know that, and I hate, you hear it all the time. If I can do it, you can do it too. But no, really, like, know that you have the power within to produce whatever it is that you need to get you from here to there. And if that looks like writing a children's book, and if that looks like just reading a children's book to your child, or start to have these tough conversations, that is simple enough for me. And what this book is supposed to do, allow us to start having conversations about a topic that far too long in our community is just overlooked.
Right. What's next? Are you going to do a sequel to Where's Skip-A? What's next for Chanae?
Well, that's my hope, right? Like I mentioned before, my father has 26 plus grandchildren with my mom, right? Aubrey's not the only one that has experiences with my father. So my hope is that we're able to continue to build upon where Skip-A and to have his other grandchildren experiences be weaved into different books and series down the line. So that's the goal.
Okay. How can our audience follow your work again? Tell them one more time and stay connected. Get your upcoming book. Just repeat it. Can't repeat it enough. Say it one more time.
I appreciate it. So I would love if you could follow me on Instagram. I write back, don't worry. It's Chanae Lavette. So CHANAE, and then Lavette, my middle name, is where they can find me on Instagram. If they want to sign up on as it relates to the book and get more information, visit ChanaeLavette.com. And then, of course, if you would love to find more information about Raw Mate and the amazing events that we have planned, you can visit rawmatewellness.com.
Wow. Okay. You guys heard that. Make sure you get the book on what day?
On July 29th.
All right. So it'll be available. You can pre-order it now. So go
Yes.
get the book. I'm going to put it up on the screen one more time for everybody who is watching. And that's what it looks like. So look it up and get her book. And, Chanae, I want to thank you for coming on the show and helping people who may be going through grief like me. I just experienced it this week, as recent as 2 days ago. So I want to thank you so much. And I appreciate you coming on.
And thank you so much. And even knowing that and being able to show up as you are, I appreciate you for giving me a platform to talk about such an important message for Black women and Black parents in general. So thank you, Janice. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And a big shout out to all of you watching, asking questions, engaging. I appreciate you. And for those who are watching the replay of this, make sure you please share it. Hey guys, we are doing a big follow campaign. We're on almost every platform under Successful Black Parenting. Please follow us. We are trying to get our numbers up. It helps us to stay around and do more things like that. You don't have to contribute money. We're free. But part of that free, all we need you to do is follow us, like, and engage. So please do that. Click on everything on our website. Go there, sign up for the newsletter. Click on the ads, whether you buy them or not. Just click on them. That all helps us. It all helps us, with staying around. But I wish you all the best because I do. I'm rooting for like everybody black. I'm rooting for everybody. I'm rooting for parents. I'm always rooting for the underdog. So I wish you all the best. Not that we're underdogs. I want to make sure I clarify that. But we have a lot of struggles. But I want to see everybody succeed. Take care and thank you for listening. Hold on. Let me end the stay right